Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I was about to take a break, and then Alex from E for Electric dropped a video with Sandy Munro where he interviewed him about Lucid Motors, and I had to make another video before I go on this trip. Are you ready? Let's go! Just to give you a little teaser of where this is going.
I am not a press guy, and you are. So you do a lot of press kind of stuff. I do a lot of engineering work. And in engineering, we know that the one thing that works well for press is controversy. So if he goes and says what he says and doesn't have any data in back of it, an engineer goes, "Man, I don't care." But everybody else goes, "Oh, wow. Ooh, wow. Ooh, that sounds exciting." That's the difference between engineers and analysts. Analysts will probably run to the bank with that. I might go to the restroom to throw up, but that's about it. I'm not going to get into a situation where, I tell them, "Hey, this guy's full of shit." There's no way. But I mean, those words have come to mind.
Those words have come to mind in the past. Sandy Munro just said Peter Rawlinson of Lucid Motors is full of shit. Now let's dive deeper into this story. One of the things that's striking to me about this conversation, and I noticed very early on, is the way Alex from E for Electric asks questions. He loads the questions with statements that Sandy might not necessarily disagree with, but he squeezes them in places where Sandy might not have time to respond and say, "Wait a minute about that." And also, what I left mostly out of this video is Sandy tells us in the video that he's been drinking whiskey. So he might not be on top of his game, and he kind of says that himself. He's still entertaining, of course, but maybe he didn't pick up on every detail of what Alex said. But listen to this.
Let's talk about Lucid, because I remember I brought it up in our conversation maybe like half a year ago to a year ago, and you were like, "Alex, there are no cars on the road, so we're not going to talk about it." Okay, fair enough. But they just had deliveries. Yes. They delivered a bunch of them. They got certified at 520 miles as an EPA range. Yes. Can't cheat that.
You notice how he slips in, "You can't cheat that"? Sandy hasn't seen the EPA documents. Sandy didn't participate in the testing. He just slips in, "You can't cheat that." We don't know that. He just slips in little drops and driblets of all the stuff. Oh, they've delivered. Sandy, you'll hear Sandy say this later. Maybe he said this already. He hasn't seen the cars. Sandy only goes with what he can see, what he can touch, what he can examine, what he can measure. So Alex comes at him with all this stuff that happened somewhere else that Sandy hasn't seen, hasn't touched, hasn't measured. And he starts throwing stuff at Sandy, who he knows has been drinking, and drops little bits here to give what he says seemingly more credibility, because Sandy doesn't always contradict him. And this is a game that Alex is playing that is frankly disgusting. And as you heard from Sandy, makes him want to go throw up. You're a marketing guy, you're a press guy, I'm an engineer. He pretty much told you right in that video, "Alex, you're one of those press guys. You'll run with this bullshit. I don't." Now, Sandy says some very, very positive things about Lucid's engineering team and management team, but we'll get to this point about how he needs to see it first.
They had the absolute best engineering team or management team, whatever you want to call it. Their team was absolutely A+. The problem I have is I never really saw one. I never went through their factory. I don't know anything about what's going on. I know what they've released to the press, and usually that means that's the square root of nothing for me. I only believe what I see or what I can measure. I'm a very simple guy. I don't have the vision, if you like, to say, "Oh yeah, that's going to happen. Oh yeah." That doesn't work for me. I only want to see what people have actually done.
So to be clear, while Sandy has positive things to say about the team, he's very clear here. I haven't seen it. I haven't touched it. I haven't measured it. I don't have the data. And what you see is Alex tries to slip in these little bits and pieces here to try to give Lucid some positives and make it appear that Sandy had said something positive about the Lucid Air or the Lucid system or the Lucid engineering. And Sandy doesn't actually know, and he's been very clear that he doesn't know, he hasn't seen it, he hasn't been in the factory. So to give the impression that Sandy has said, "Yeah, this works, yeah, this is great," Sandy just told you, I'm not the guy who's going to tell you, "Well, that sounds good, that sounds like it might work." He's the guy who wants to actually see it, hold it, measure it, touch it. Alex is trying to give you the impression over the course of this video that Sandy's endorsing some of the things that Lucid has done when Sandy hasn't actually been able to verify any of it.
Do you believe the EPA certification is?
You can't fake that. The EPA, actually, the EPA buys our products, our reports and whatnot. The EPA has been very good to us, and the EPA is fair, just, and right. So there's no problem there.
Just to be clear here, Sandy has not seen the documents. He hasn't seen the data. Sandy is asked this question off the cuff while he's drinking whiskey, after he's had a fair bit of whiskey. And he's asked this question, and Alex slips this in here. Did Sandy say he read the EPA documents? No. Was he clear about what exactly, happened? Sandy doesn't want to offend the EPA by saying something bad about the EPA, but he hasn't seen Lucid's documents. He hasn't seen the document where Lucid said reads in 924 volts, 150 amp hours. That works out to... Alex didn't ask him, here, let's look at these documents. What do you think? What's the size of their battery pack? Which is one of the hot disputes right now. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. But to just say, well, they can't cheat that. How do you know they didn't cheat it? We don't know if Lucid cheated the EPA documents. We know that Volkswagen has cheated on things before. We know that things can be cheated. And Sandy's caught here in a spot where he does stuff for the EPA and he doesn't want to be seen saying anything bad about the EPA. That doesn't mean Sandy's saying they didn't cheat the EPA test. He hasn't reviewed the documents. He doesn't have the data. It's not a fair question to ask a guy who's had half a glass of whiskey. Watch here. Alex is going to slip in another bit of misleading information. How
in the world were they able to beat Tesla? How were they able to do this where they beat them by more than 100 miles, right? 520, and I think the longest range right now that Tesla has 408 or whatever. They claiming efficiency because they're using the same 2170s, right?
He slipped in a couple things in there. How did they beat Tesla? Well, Sandy doesn't know that they beat Tesla yet. Sandy hasn't seen it. Sandy hasn't touched it. Sandy hasn't measured it. Sandy doesn't know that they beat Tesla, right? And they're using the same 2170 cells. Well, Sandy doesn't know that either. And we don't know that. And Lucid has said that they're using different 2170. They haven't really been clear what 2170 cells are they using. Are they using the same chemistry as Tesla? Are they using a different chemistry? Lucid fans keep telling me that Lucid has better battery technology. Well, if they have better battery technology, aren't they using different batteries than Tesla? So, and Alex himself has said they have better battery technology. So if they're using better battery technology, are they using the same cells or different cells? And you just slip in little bits of information, misinformation, slip them under the radar while you're asking them a different question. And that's a tremendously misleading way to conduct an interview. Ask open questions. What do you think about Lucid? Instead of slipping in your bits of your support for Lucid and trying to make it look like Sandy's endorsing these facts that we don't know. It's the same 2170 size. We know that. We don't know what the chemistry inside Lucid cells is. Are they using nickel, manganese, cobalt? Are they using nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminum? We don't know. They haven't said. They've been very careful not to say what they're doing. They've been the opposite of transparent. And this is one of the things that I've been very critical of. Be open, be honest, tell us what you're doing. Then we can know whether you're full of crap or not. And they keep hiding everything. And that's something that brings my suspicion up. People wonder why I'm so suspicious of Lucid. It's because they keep lying and they keep hiding. You can see in this clip, Sandy says, when I tear it down, then I'll know more. But this is a little bit involved, so listen to this.
Efficiency makes a huge difference. So depending on how slippery the car is, and being judicious with electrical power is extremely important. How they've decided to blend the vehicle, how do I heat it? How do I cool it? How do I keep the occupants safe and things like that? There's things that you can do. Always there's things that you can do that can make it better. And if they've gotten to 520, God bless them. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And I'm hoping that when I can get a hold of one of their cars and tear it apart, I'll find out what's going on and I'll spread the news so that everybody can get higher mileage. I'm always interested in that.
Sandy wants to tear it down to see, but notice he said if they got to 520 miles. Sandy is not saying they got to 520 miles. He said if they got to 520 miles. He hasn't seen it. He hasn't tested it. He hasn't measured it. He doesn't know. He hasn't even seen the EPA documents himself. This is where, Alex misleads and Sandy gives it to you straight. And, there's value. Sandy wants to tear it down so that he can understand if they're doing something more efficiently, what that is, so that can help other car manufacturers be more efficient. So we have better cars for everyone and we use less energy and we're more efficient and that's better for society. That's what he wants to do. That's, what I love about Sandy is, we got some great technology here. Let's figure out how we can make that available for everyone. Now, Sandy is again going to say nice things about the Lucid team, but get back to this point that he wants to see it.
I haven't seen their car, so it's hard for me to make an assessment or assumption. But they've got really good engineers, and they've got a really good management team, and they haven't had any flubs along the way.
I just want to disagree with Sandy on this one point. They haven't had any flubs on the way. They've had flubs. They said they were going to deliver 6,000 cars this year, and as they approached the SPAC merger, they kept telling that lie, what they knew was a lie. And then when they announced the SPAC merger, they dropped it to 577 vehicles, and it doesn't look like they're going to get to 577 this year. Maybe they're going to beat my 100 mark. Maybe we'll know, and we're not going to know that for a while because they're not transparent. They've had flubs. They've had issues. They specifically said the car wasn't ready for the spring. They were going to deliver vehicles in the spring, and they didn't. So to say they haven't had flubs, my gut hunch is Sandy's just not following Lucid that closely, so he doesn't know. I'm not trying to criticize Sandy. I don't think he follows Lucid as closely as I do or we do, and so he doesn't know about the flubs because he's not paying that much attention because he's got more important shit to do.
I'm saying that probably what they say is true as far as the 520 miles. And I got no problems with that until I can get to the car and start ripping and tearing and testing and all that.
See, Sandy, again, he's got to have the car himself. He's got to see it himself. He's not taking somebody else's word for it. He's not taking marketing fluff. He's not taking Alex's word for it. He wants to see it himself. That's how he makes the judgment. He gives their management team and their engineering team credit. Obviously they put together a team of people who have experience. Are they able to deliver what they say they're going to deliver? We'll see about that. And you're going to see it again here where Alex asks a loaded question that makes it seem like he's saying something that may or may not be true.
Looks like Lucid has done better than Tesla and many others is charging, right? 300. I think they're first to market at 350 kilowatts.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter, but as far as how many miles per minute of charging it adds, it looks like they are also on top.
We don't know that. He slips this in. They're better at charging. Well, no, they're not necessarily better at charging. We don't know that. Sandy doesn't know that. Sandy hasn't measured their charging. He just told you he has to see it for himself. He's told you again and again and again, I have to see it for myself. I have to measure it. I have to take it apart. And he keeps dropping this bomb. They're better. They're better than Tesla at this. Their 350 kilowatts is better. They add more miles per minute or more miles per hour than Tesla. Well, we don't really know that yet. But he slips in these loaded questions to score points for his view rather than asking Sandy straightforward questions and getting his opinion about things. And of course, you can't get straightforward, informative answers from Sandy about this topic because he hasn't seen the car. He didn't go to the factory. He hasn't driven the car. He hasn't taken apart the car. He's told you what he needs to be able to say something authoritative, and you just drop these things in conversation while he's drinking and see if you can get him to sort of give you what you want. We're going to get into the 900-volt architecture here, and I'm going to disagree with Sandy at one point here, but again, Sandy hasn't seen it, Sandy hasn't touched it, but let's just hear what he has to say.
Talking about power, to go from 400 to 900, that's a big deal. That makes a giant difference. And you were asking, well, how are they doing it? Well, that's one way. The more voltage you have, the more likelihood you're going to be able to make those electric motors move or work better. And that's kind of like what I'm thinking they've done. That gives you better efficiency.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and disagree with Sandy on one detail here. Yes, it's true that from an engineering perspective, if you go from 400 volts to 900 volts, you can get more efficiency. Going to a higher voltage on its own doesn't guarantee higher efficiency. Porsche is at 800 volts where Tesla's at 400 volts. Porsche is much less efficient than Tesla. You have to do a lot more than go to high voltage to get there. And the idea that, yes, we're going to 900 volts, that's a good start. You need more than that. And, in this excerpt, without Sandy having seen it, touched it, felt it, measured it, sure, in principle, going to 900 volts will get you there. It ain't enough. And we don't know whether they're really there or not.
Any drawbacks to having an 8 or 900 volt battery? More expensive?
No, the only thing is you've got to find suppliers that can give you what you want when it comes to the componentry associated with 900 volts. 900 volts It's a lot different than what everybody else is using right now. But if Lucid's gone in there and figured out, talked to their supply community and figured out how to make everything work at 900 volts, God bless them.
This is another important point that we didn't get in depth here, is it works if you have the supply chain to back it up. I have a source that tells me that there's a lot of problems in the supply chain. We've heard this supply chain issues all across the industry. The legacy auto manufacturers are having problems with the supply chain. Tesla has managed to work around the supply chain. I've heard from a source that Lucid, Rivian, and Arcimoto and a lot of other startups are having trouble with supply chain. This is a huge challenge, and Lucid is taking that challenge to a next level by trying to get components that are, let's say, 900 volt appropriate, which may be harder to come by in the first place. So whether they're able to manufacture cars at volume is going to be a huge issue if they can't get the supply chain down for this innovation that they've got. In this next clip, Alex is going to slip in yet another little bit where he's trying to make something true through Sandy that isn't necessarily true. He's going to try to say that Peter Rawlinson has credibility now.
Peter Rawlinson, the CEO of Lucid, recently came out and said, listen, 4680s is nothing but a fancy packaging. There's no breakthrough there. There are some advantages, but mainly is, it's just a fancy package. It's bigger battery, just has more energy, and it's a wash as far as between that and 2170s. Really? He couldn't say it before, having the best range in business. Now he's got some credibility.
Now he's got some credibility that Alex just decided that Peter Rawlinson now has credibility. Now, he set up a great question. Sandy gives a great answer. You saw bits of it already. But he claims that Peter now has credibility. Where did Peter get this credibility from? This is manufactured credibility. This is marketing fluff. This is people like Alex. They've got an army of YouTubers who make these positive videos about Lucid without asking hard questions. Why didn't he ask Sandy, why does the fucking car weigh 5,200 pounds? Why didn't he ask that question? Why do the pro-Lucid YouTubers never bring up facts that are inconvenient? Why didn't he bring that up? Why does the car weigh 5,200 pounds? Isn't that an issue? There's all kinds of great questions you could ask about why does this car weigh 5,200 pounds? He doesn't ask that question. Strap on a pair, Alex, and ask a hard question. Ask a question that isn't inherently favorable to Lucid, that isn't tilted in the way you word it to make Lucid look better. Then maybe you'll have some credibility. But let's get into Sandy's answer, because you caught a glimpse of it before, but let's get a hint of Sandy's answer. Sandy apparently does not think Peter Rawlinson's very credible, does he?
Lady downstairs and I at the bar, we hit it off, and we're both old, and she gave me a lot to drink. And it's a good thing, because right now my head is spinning, trying to figure out how to not throw Mr. Rawlinson under the bus. But I can't think of anything, so here it comes. That's crap. When you go to the 4680, my weight goes down significantly because I don't have a bunch of little containers. I got one big container. Secondly, I already know that Spring Power, their technology is in that battery, and I know, based on what I've heard through the grapevine, and I got stuff from different battery manufacturers that tell me, guess what? This chemistry is working better. Now, maybe what Tesla wants to do is stay with the 400 volt system. I think they've got a 400 volt system now currently. They want to stay with that system. They don't want to screw around with a bunch of different new componentry and whatnot. You know what? They want to get more power. So the power comes from the cells. The 4680 cells are going to be quite a bit more powerful. And I guess that this is where Peter and I part ways.
If you thought Peter Rawlinson had credibility, and then you went to Sandy Munro and you claimed that Peter has credibility, I think you've just seen that Sandy doesn't think Peter has that much credibility. Because when you say something that's obviously false, then you damage your credibility. And Sandy knows, right? 4680 isn't something he's guessing about. He knows. He's talked to people. He's seen data. He's analyzed it. He understands the engineering behind it. 4680 is a major advance in battery technology. And for Peter Rawlinson to say it's nothing special is declaring to the world, at least in Sandy's eyes, no, you're not credible. That's crap. You know, you're full of shit, as you saw in the other clip. So this is where, you know, Alex tried to get something. And by the way, you know, Sandy admits he's been drinking, right? He's trying to be delicate and he can't be. You can see that Alex went after Sandy when he knew Sandy had been drinking, and he's able to slip in some bits and pieces here. And he tried to score this bomb of now that Peter has credibility, and no, apparently Peter doesn't have that much credibility. So for those of you who think Peter Rawlinson is this highly credible guy, great management team, apparently Sandy Munro does not think Peter Rawlinson is credible. Okay, so I'm not the only one who thinks Peter Rawlinson has credibility issues. For all you Lucid trolls out there who are saying, oh, Warren, you suck, you're attacking them, whatever. No, I don't like liars. I don't like liars. I don't like people who hide things. Sandy doesn't like people who say things that aren't true. It was crap. He's full of shit. If he's full of shit about that, if he's lying about that, what else is Peter Rawlinson lying about? What else is he doing? He is playing a marketing fluff game. Lucid has been a marketing fluff operation from the very beginning. Maybe it's just Silicon Valley, fake it till you make it, and they're trying to get there. I'm not there yet. I'm willing to accept that Lucid may get there. They're not there yet. For all you Lucid trolls, here's Sandy saying Peter Rawlinson's full of crap. All right? It ain't just me. Explain that shit. Explain why Peter Rawlinson said that 48680 is nothing when Panasonic thinks it's real, CATL thinks it's real, LG Chem thinks it's real, Sandy Munro thinks it's real. Everybody who's any limiting factor thinks it's real. It obviously makes sense that 4680 is a brilliant innovation, and Peter Rawlinson has his head up his ass bringing that up. Okay, so thank you for watching. Thank you, Alex, for giving me the opportunity to rebut your silliness and point out the flaws in the way you present things. Thank you to Sandy Munro for being yourself, for speaking as straightforward as you do. The opposite of people who hide stuff and deceive. Sandy is always open, always honest, always straightforward. Absolutely love Sandy Munro. Sandy, if you want to have a straightforward interview with somebody who's going to ask you open questions and not slip loaded points in to try to put one by you and use you to get credibility for something that isn't true, I would love to talk to you. And for those of you who love my channel, please check out my other videos. Please check out the t-shirts. Tesla, this is one of the most popular t-shirts. Tesla's the next Tesla, elonbits.com. Thank you to the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden, all my Patreon supporters for helping the channel grow. Check out the Daily Lie on Locals, and thank you so much for watching.